Hello,
Hello.
we are back.
Hello, hello.
Hey everyone, let me make sure that
Hello again.
we should be up and running. Yes, we are live.
Okay. Very cool
Good.
technology.
Technology, we've done it.
Yes.
So I think we can just wait a couple minutes until we dive in. It's like we're already getting some people to join. Great. So we've got let's say where everyone is hailing from. I am hailing from North Bend, Washington.
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
I'm in Snohomish, Washington, which is just north of Seattle.
And I'm in the next time zone over in Bozeman, Montana, where it's currently snowing.
Oh my gosh.
Great. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. So my name is Bailey. I'm the director of Where the Rope Ends, which is our documentary film that has been in progress. It'll be 6 years this May, which is crazy. Nicole and I met in yoga teacher training. And at the time, she was in a wheelchair. She had a bar holding her pelvis together, which she'll get into more details about how exactly that happened. But I heard more about her story. I work in film and was just completely captivated and just learned more and more about her, learned about search and rescue. We started this as what was going to be a short film for search and rescue, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And now it is a feature film, and here we are about 6 years later. So this is our first event to kick off our fundraising campaign, our first live discussion where we're going to go into detail about Nicole's accident and then hear from Chris and John with Search and Rescue about their role in it. So it's really cool because the film is set to release this fall, but this will give you an opportunity to really hear the details about what happened, which then in the film we go into, but then also we talk about Nicole's upbringing, Nicole's recovery, all of that. And so we are fundraising to complete the film. We've had tons and tons of volunteers and put in a lot of time, a lot of resources into this. And so if you're watching this on our Give Butter page, there's opportunities to donate there, but it is optional. Otherwise, if you're watching on YouTube, I also have the Give Butter link in the description. And so your donation, it's going towards the completion of the film, but also we have tons of exciting things once we release the film. So it's not just the film that you're donating to, but it's actually going to be used as a tool for volunteer search and rescue organizations around the country to raise awareness and an opportunity for them to raise funds. So with that, oh, one more thing. If you have questions, I will be monitoring the chat in YouTube. So please put those in there and I'll bring them up to the group. Okay, so with that, let's have everyone do some introductions, who you are, what you do, and your role and experience with the project. So Nicole, you can go ahead.
Well, I am the girl who fell. I'm the girl the movie's about. I'm a trauma nurse here in Seattle, Washington, and really just an outdoor enthusiast. I grew up in the Midwest and moved out to the Pacific Northwest and was just captivated by the many opportunities to get outside in different ways than I could in the cornfields in Illinois. So that brought me to a lot of really interesting and exciting adventures, one of which being the topic of this film, which was a canyoning accident that I had, where these fine gentlemen helped me out of the canyon and got me back to safety. So that's just a little bit about my background.
Go ahead, John. Introduce yourself.
There we go. Is the audio working? Are we good?
Yes.
Excellent. So my name's John Morton. I'm a volunteer with the search and rescue team in Snohomish County, Washington, just north of Seattle. I've been with the search and rescue team, which includes our mountain rescue group in Everett, since 2000. And been during that time involved with many things, including our helicopter program and our rope rescue, where I'm an instructor. I'm in charge of our water rescue team, which includes a canyon rescue mission in this part of the world, particularly relevant to Nicoles rescue, and then a variety of other things along the way as I spend my time in search and rescue helping folks out. And so I was responding that day. I was not on helicopter duty, Chris was, but I was in charge of the overall ground mission that was supporting both the contingency to get Nicole out if the helicopter had not been able to do that, and also to get the rest of the party out that day.
Great. And I'm Chris Moriarty. Thanks everybody for joining in. I guess by day, I am a travel consultant. I own and run Moreaway Adventures, which is an adventure travel company, which allows me to work remotely, which I was doing on the day of Nicole's accident. At that time, I was also a member of both Everett Mountain Rescue as well as the Snohomish County Helicopter Rescue Team. And so on our duty days that we would sign up for, we just have to be on call on those given days and within about 30 minutes or so of the hangar where the helicopter is. So I remember specifically signing up for duty that day because it was going to be the day of the eclipse. And I just thought, man, seems like something could happen that day. So that might be a good day to be on duty. We're always pretty excited to be able to get a mission and be able to help folks out. And sure enough, that day, the call came in and it was a great day, successful mission, and it's great to see Nicole on the other side of it.
I'm glad to be on the other side of it.
Me too.
That was a crazy time. I don't know if people remember what they were doing that day, but it was like there was a big buzz about this eclipse going on, and I had actually bought a hotel in Salem, Oregon, because it was in the path of totality that was going across the United States. And I was going to be one of those crazy people in a car driving through all the traffic just so that I could see it at the best spot. And then kind of last minute, I got a phone call from my girlfriends who were going to go do this canyon instead. And one of them she is hard to say no to. She's one of these people that's like, do you really want to sit in traffic for like hours on end with all of those people, or would you rather be out in a canyon hanging from a rope on a warm sunny day and just having this magical experience? And of course, you just kind of give up your hotel plans and go along with the cool kids. So that's kind of how it happened. We made plans. They had planned on going as a group of 3 other people about a week before they asked me. And so we all just met up about dawn that day so that we could get up to the top, hike up to where we would drop in. And we wanted to get there just about the same time as the eclipse was starting so that we could sit down and eat our snacks and really enjoy it before we dropped into the canyon that day. We had pretty good timing. We got there about 15 minutes before everything started, and we were able to sit down and get out our eclipse glasses and geek out on that and just enjoy some nice time with our friends in the middle of the woods and not be stuck in traffic.
Sounds like a good plan on paper, but I know things ended up a little differently. And Nicole, one aspect of the story that I always thought was really interesting is this premonition that you had going into the day and the fact that you had a hotel booked and changed your plans. And so can you tell us a little more about what that feeling was?
Yeah, I don't know. I just remember going into work and I was in the report room talking to a colleague, and I said, I don't know what is going to happen, but I kind of feel like something is going to happen on the day of the eclipse when I go into this canyon. And it wasn't a feeling of fear or anxiety. It was more just like this energy, like I don't know if I'm going to meet a cute guy on the trail or if what is actually going to happen, but I don't know. Just very rare moments in life where I've had that feeling, but that was definitely one of them, where I was kind of like curious what's going to happen this day, as I went in. And I remember as we were driving to the canyon, I told the girls I was climbing with that I had this feeling, and they're like, yeah, something's going to happen. We're going to have fun, They thought I was kind of crazy.
And I won't give away any spoilers, but one fun aspect of the film is that we do dive into those other moments of Nicole's life where she had that premonition. And as we've, dove into your upbringing, to the accident, to your recovery, something really interesting is we found all of these connections of different parts of her life and the accident, and it's just really interesting. So I won't give away any spoilers, but
yeah, it's surreal to pick apart your life in a way like this, like to be the subject of a documentary. You learn so many weird things about your history that you never really connected before, and it's been fascinating. It's been like really eye-opening and a huge part of my healing and recovery for sure, to be able to walk back through all of these memories and make something good out of it.
that's great. And so getting into the day, can you give everyone just a brief overview of what canyoneering is?
Sure. It's kind of I guess instead of walking beside a canyon on a trail, you're walking in the water until you get to a place where it's not safe to walk any farther. And then you set up a rope and you rappel down the waterfall until you get to a safe place where you can traverse again. And you just kind of continue that process until you get to the location where you are going to climb out of the canyon. So some canyons, it's 1 or 2 rappels. This one I think has, that I was doing that day, Wallace Falls has, I think, 15 rappels. Some are short, 20 feet, and some are big and long. The one I was on when I had my accident was the main waterfall in Wallace Falls, and it's a 265-foot waterfall.
Okay. And so walk us through that moment of what exactly went wrong and what happened after you went off that ledge.
Well, I had done probably 5 other Class C canyons. Class C means there's water in the canyon, before I did Wallace Falls. And we had all canyoned together before, felt like it was a good team. I didn't personally go as often as the rest of the group. So as we were setting up for that day, we did some practice rappelling on dry land, on trees. We practiced different tie-offs and different safety maneuvers that you need to be ready to do in certain situations. And then we dropped into the canyon. The first few rappels are pretty short, really easy. And it was just a lovely day. The water flow was nice. It wasn't too heavy. It was sunny, just beautiful. Lots of, excitement in the air because we had just watched the eclipse. And so we're just kind of having this beautiful day with the most lovely people that I ever wanted to be with, and everything was going wonderfully. And I think we were about, 8 rappels in before we got to the rappel where I had my accident. The interesting thing about this spot was the ladies I was climbing with had just done this canyon the week before, and they had an incident where the rope rubbed over a rock and nearly cut the rope while they were there the last time. So on this rappel, we were very focused on the rock face and trying to mitigate any risk, tape the rock so that the rope wouldn't get into contact with anything sharp. We talked through the rappel. That's kind of how they prepared me. I was the only one who hadn't done this canyon before. So everyone would say, you know, this is a 100-foot rappel and you can expect this, this, and this along the way. And, you know, so they told me this is a 100-foot rappel. It's this 265-foot waterfall, but we break it up into 3 rappels, and you're going to come down onto a slippery surface when you get down there. So someone else is going before you. They'll wave you over to where it's safe to wait when you get to the bottom. They said, you know, the first little bit of this rappel is going to be walking on a rock face, and then you'll drop over a ledge to a free hanging area where your feet won't be on the rock anymore. They said, expect to go a little bit faster down the rope because gravity is going to pull you down. So be prepared for when you step over that ledge. And I felt great because I had done 8 rappels before, nothing had happened. And so there I go. I'm walking down the rock face and I get to the area where I'm going to step over the ledge to the free hanging area. And when I stepped over, I wasn't prepared for the amount that gravity was going to pull on me. I just pretty much immediately started traveling down the rope a lot faster than I had expected and was unable to slow myself. I was squeezing the rope. The only way you can really stop yourself when you're rappelling is with one of your hands, you kind of squeeze the rope. And I was squeezing so hard that I was getting rope burns on my hand, and I didn't matter how hard I was squeezing, it just wasn't getting me under control. And eventually it burnt my hand so bad that my just gut reaction was to let go, you know, and then you're in big trouble because now you don't have a break. So both of my hands ended up above my head, gripping onto the rope. And in that moment, I knew that I had made a huge mistake. And there were, of course, things that I could have done to self-correct, but I think I was so gripped by terror that I couldn't think my way out of it at all. I knew my hand that I was using to control the speed down the rope was injured too badly to use that. I didn't know, I couldn't figure out how to tie myself off safely because as I was holding onto the rope, I'm still slipping down the rope. So I'm not in a controlled situation where I could do anything really, but just flounder. And it was all consuming, the terror. You just it becomes myopic. Your view narrows and all you can see is your hands on the rope and your feet hanging 100 feet off the ground. And I just kept looking up at my hands and back down at the ground, analyzing like, okay, I know as a nurse, I've seen people die from a 3-foot fall off a ladder. How in the heck am I ever going to survive this? You know, like I knew that this was going to be fatal. If I fell, this was the end. And that realization brings you into even more terror. And I think some point along the way, I felt like I was choking. And I took in a big, deep breath. And in that breath, there was, they call it, you know, a vagal response. So you kind of can physiologically slow yourself back down if you activate these receptors inside of your body, and they're activated by deep breaths. I had a pretty extensive yoga practice before this, so I think when I took that breath, my body kind of naturally knew how to relax into that breath. And in that moment, that short moment, it was like a reset button was hit, and I was able to kind of get a grip and realize, okay, this is your final moment. And what do you want it to be? Because you don't have a choice, you know? So you can either sit here and freak out and flail to your death, or you can decide what you want it to be. And I didn't want to go out terrified. I just wanted to be able to be conscious of what I was doing in this last moment. And the only thing that came to me, the only thing that mattered was, if this is the last moment I have, I need my daughter to hear me say, I love you one more time. I need her to hear it like on her wedding day. I need her to hear it when she has her own baby. I need her to hear it in every moment that it's going to really matter, where she's going to really miss me. This is the moment I'm going to somehow make an imprint on the universe so that this echoes forever, because that was the only thing that mattered. So I just focused on that. I just closed my eyes and tried to just kind of reach her somehow. And it was the most beautiful experience, I think, to have been able to take control and to feel like this was my final moment and this was the way I was going to choose to go out, you know? And that process centered me even more than that breath did. And when I opened my eyes, I was able to see beyond this myopic view, and my vantage point widened, and I could see a ledge over to the side that I couldn't see before when I was spinning out in terror. And I thought, you know, it's still going to be an enormous fall, but if I could make it to that ledge, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to come out of this. So there wasn't much thinking left, because I'm really kind of slipping farther and faster down the rope now. So I just kind of tried to swing myself out over that ledge, and I had to just let go of the rope and free fall. And it felt like, I don't know if you've ever been in a car wreck before, but you know, time just slows down, and so many things happen in that moment. But I just remember saying, just, you know, let the fall take you, just be soft, just fall into it. Don't tense up, just land on your feet, just let it, just don't tighten anything, and just roll down your back, and whatever you do, don't hit your head. You know, I'm saying all of this as I'm falling through the sky. And I don't know how it happened, but that's how it did. I hit my feet first and rolled down my back and didn't hit my head. Knocked all of the air out of me for sure. I was extremely surprised that I was alive when I hit the ground. I didn't know how long I would be alive, but was just, I mean, I was certain as soon as I hit, that would be the end. And that was really just the beginning. From that point forward, was a horrendous battle to just stay sane and stay alive, while we waited for search and rescue to come. Luckily, I was with a canyoneer who is cognizant enough about what he does to carry a rescue beacon, and he was able to activate that and get the wheels in motion, for people to start heading our way.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicole. That story never gets old. It's truly fascinating. And I mean, before we continue on with what happened next, I'm curious because Chris and John, with search and rescue, you all are the most efficient heroes. You're in, you're out. I know it's been expressed to us that a lot of the time you don't get to hear the stories about the people that rescued you. So hearing Nicole's experience in that much detail, like being the ones that saved her life, I mean, how do you feel listening to that?
It's a different perspective for sure. I think that I can't speak for John, but at least for me, we put a lot of hours into training so that things become very secondhand. And I don't want to say mechanical because everything is different, but you're very precise, you're very efficient in all of the technical aspects of executing a rescue, especially on the helicopter team, because typically if they're calling a helicopter, something pretty serious has happened, and so you want to have as much awareness as possible when you get inserted as a rescue technician. And the only way that you can have that awareness is if that you're so practiced with everything else that it becomes automatic, not so automatic that you're complacent, but automatic enough that you feel super comfortable, operating around a helicopter that's making a lot of noise and wind, and it's a big dangerous machine. But you can continue to have situational awareness to keep yourself safe in this new environment, to keep the people that you're rescuing and working with safe, to keep your teammates safe. You're typically going in with a medic. And so to hear all of this, when you go on missions, everything feels, I don't want to, the only word that comes to mind is mechanical, and that's probably not the best word for it. But I almost look at it as emotionless. Like I'm really trying to be calm, composed, and just think what's next, so that we can get them out. And so to hear Nicole's side of it, there's so much emotion and there's so much awareness of what's going on, and so much emotional stimuli that's happening. It's a very different situation that I'm not used to either hearing or experiencing on a rescue. And so it's very interesting to just hear that. I'm so grateful that she was okay and that all of this turned out really well. And it's very it just reinforces how important safety is, because things can really change in a blink, and go from a totally super fun day, and in the space of 10, 20, 30 seconds turn into something that is absolutely life altering. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, my experience as a nurse is very similar. I mean, I'm always in these kind of situations where people are on the edge of life, and the brain can only completely process a finite amount of things, and we as the people rescuing have so many obligations to keep our eye on the ball on the things that matter to keep this person alive. And it's not that we don't want to be in the emotion with them, but it's just it's too much to add on to the already over full plate of things that you're dealing with. So some people call it a protective mechanism that they use when they deal with these, traumatic events. But I think for me, it's more that I just can't process anything more than what I need to process to keep them alive, and then after the fact, I can come back to the emotional side and reflect on all of that later. But in the moment, you have this much space to wiggle in, and you're trying to figure out, if there's anything else you should be doing. Could I be doing something better? And just trying to have the best outcome for the person you're serving.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, and then I want to hear from John too. But the thing that always sticks with me came from my EMT training, and it was, when you're dealing with an emergency situation, that person is having an emergency. As a rescuer, I'm not having an emergency. Like my day is going fine. Like this is all normal. And so keeping that separation of like, the subject and the patient.
Did we lose Chris?
Oh,
Oops, sorry.
you still there, John?
You're still there. John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear it. It looked like maybe Chris was back for a moment.
Oh, sorry.
I can guess what. Oh, there's Chris back. I was going to guess at what he was saying, but go ahead and have a go at it, Chris.
No, I was just saying that when a subject or a patient is having an emergency, it's not our emergency, and just keeping that separation and realization that they can be in pain, they can be panicking, they can be having a really, really bad day, but I'm not in pain, I'm not panicking, and I'm not having a bad day, and that's what allows me to kind of operate as efficiently and effectively as possible as a rescuer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go ahead, John.
No, it's such a great point, and we almost replay that mantra over and over to our brand new team members that our patient's emergency is not our emergency, because that helps us remain effective in that difficult context. It's so great to hear Nicole's story as she goes through that. It's such a treat for us as first responders to even get that at all. Never mind a good outcome, which is rare enough, but then to have that feedback and so powerfully delivered, that's just fantastic. It's interesting as I hear that, of course, that perspective right at the center of this whole call for Chris and I, of course, it starts very much from the outside. We had a piece of that where we began actually a few weeks before this day where Nicole was injured, because I took our water rescue team down Wallace Canyon as a training exercise, and we reset all those anchors, which we do. And so we knew just where they were. And so we've got that context to begin with. But then the other thing is that while the group in the canyon initiated the satellite initiated rescue call, we also got what was at least half a dozen 911 calls from people, in the park, up on the trail and so on. And so we had a very tangled picture of what was going on as we were initiating this call. And in any case, that's just all small details, because the truth of the matter is, I listened to Nicole's story, I was just sitting here thinking, well, all I did was lead a group of technical rescuers to do this kind of long and complicated rescue thing. That's way less interesting than Nicole's description. So that's, it's kind of just another day for us, as Chris described. It's just one of many cases where we go out, do a good job, but it's in a larger context. It's not a once in a lifetime event like it is for Nicole. It's very powerful, really great.
Well, I was lucky enough to be with a couple of trauma nurses when I had my accident, but we are people who work with lots of equipment and lots of doctors and lots of imaging and lots of medications. And to be in a situation where you don't have any of that, as a healthcare professional, it is the most, it just undoes you. You don't even know, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I think for about 4 hours, I would say, I've got to move. I can't stay like this anymore, but they knew that I had a spinal cord injury. They had to keep me still. And one of the nurse friends would pick up my arm and move it just 2 inches over and say, is that better? I'd be like, yeah, that's okay. Like, that's the situation
Wow.
we're in. And they were saying things to me they wouldn't say to a normal patient. They'd be like, your heart is beating at this. If you were bleeding out, your heart would be beating faster. So I know you're not bleeding out. We were just a mess. I was saying things like, do you have a pen or anything? Because I think I have a pneumomediastinum. I think you're going to have to stab me. I mean, like, it was out of this world conversations while we were sitting there waiting. And so to see the show of support, they could see what was happening. They could see you guys setting everything up. And when the helicopter got there, I mean, it was just tears of joy and hysteria. It was just like, thank God you hadn't even rescued us yet. But you were so vulnerable in that moment that you just, like, as soon as you see that there's someone who can help, it's just, oh my God, just so much relief. And it wasn't just seeing you guys. It was from the moment Chris hit the ground, he was connecting with, so many things he had to pay attention to: his own safety, getting Tom down, the paramedic safely, looking at the terrain, assessing all the other people. But I didn't feel like he was doing anything but paying attention to me. He was so connected to me on a human level. I don't know if you are aware of how good of a job you do, but I felt like you were seeing me as a person and not as the subject who's injured. And that was so moving to me, especially as I laid there not knowing if I was going to live or die, to have someone who was willing to connect, even though we're, paying attention to all of these things. That's all that mattered, that mattered more than anything. And I was kind of slipping in and out and having a hard time breathing and having all this chest pain. And all I really wanted to do was remember Chris's name. He had his last name written on his helmet, and I just kept saying it over and over: Moriarty, Moriarty. I'm going to remember, because I've got to say thank you to these people. It was incredible. And, after you got me out of there and my friends continued down the canyon, they describe the ground team as a sea of headlights lighting the canyon, and the show of support that was there is what got them through. It was like they needed to see that more than they needed anything else in that moment, So you may think that what you're doing, even though you weren't the actual one who, ferried me across the water, was not much of anything or not exciting, but that was the excitement for us as the people being rescued. That was everything.
Well, Nicole, I'm certainly thrilled that Chris and company were able to get you out with that helicopter, because that was a far better solution than anything we had going on the ground. We were going to be doing big highline rope systems and a bunch of other things, and then carrying you out on a trail and all kinds of things that are horrible with your injuries. And so that is a much better solution. And of course, we didn't know that that helicopter scenario was going to work. Our initial information, actually, when I was driving, I actually had a hands-free speaker phone call with Chris and the entire air crew, because we knew where the anchors were coming down that, and so we could describe it to them so they would know where to look and that sort of thing. But our initial information suggested you were at the bottom of the second pitch, not the bottom of the first pitch, and that would have made it longer than the helicopter hoist cable. So that would have been a much more challenging day. So many things worked out much, much better than they might have all the way around, and contributed to your very good outcome. And the story, our ability to tell the stories, is all a consequence of that. So well done.
Yeah, it's extraordinary to think about how many people were moving in my direction as soon as we sent that call out. I mean, you've got a helicopter crew, you've got your ground crew, you had people coming in above and below. Like it was an extraordinary amount of people, and no one knows who is going to be the one to rescue the subject until the helicopter gets there and you can determine if it's a safe extraction or not. So you have to pretend like you're the one and just keep going after it. And it's just fascinating how many people are willing to devote their time and energy and effort on their off days to rescuing a silly girl like me. Like it's profoundly inspiring. And with my injuries after my accident, this movie is the way that I say I'm a volunteer for search and rescue. But yeah, the amount of training that it takes to stay as competent as you guys are out there. I know how much training it takes because I work in a hospital system and we practice these drills too, but in a much more controlled environment. And it was spotless. It was just unbelievably well orchestrated. And it was obvious that you guys knew what you were doing and had worked together and had practiced this many times for it to go as smoothly as it did. So I know there's hours and hours of training that goes into this. But for people that like to be outside and like to hang out with cool people while they're doing it and learn new skills, like this is a great gig for people who are into outdoor stuff and want to like be as safe as they can in these environments. You get a built-in buddy system and built-in training, and then you get to go rescue some people too. So that's pretty awesome.
And I just want to emphasize for people that are watching that aren't aware, we're hearing about how many people were on site for Nicole's rescue, obviously how highly trained everyone is. But I just want to emphasize that search and rescue is volunteer, which is crazy. And I had no idea going into this, hearing about Nicole's story, that you all were volunteer. I assumed that it was just, a part of the police system or whatever. And so it differs by county or by state, but in Washington, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the search and rescue chapters are volunteer. Is that correct?
With the exception of things like national parks, so Mount Rainier, Rocky Mountain National Park, they have their own rescue agencies. But in general, in the U.S., search and rescue falls under the auspices of county sheriffs, typically, and then that is mostly staffed by volunteers across the nation. Yeah, so there's very, very, very few paid search and rescue, and most of that it does revolve around the national park system, but otherwise it's volunteer.
Amazing, thank you.
It is amazing. And then for the vast majority of these organizations, the only way they they survive is by the kindness of others. You need people in the community that are willing to support monetarily and otherwise to keep these things going. I don't know. I mean, I've had my own theories about what the world would look like if search and rescue didn't exist, but what is your theory on that? Like, if we didn't have a world with search and rescue in it, and the government or someone else was in charge, like, I don't know if that would you could even call them. Like, could you call the National Guard for a rescue and like have that actually be a successful thing when there's so much land to cover and only a finite amount of resources to use? I mean, I don't think the majority of people would have anyone even show up.
Yeah, it's difficult to theorize on that. There are situations and circumstances where higher level capability is needed, and certainly the military, National Guard have helicopters that are far more powerful than what we have in Snohomish County. It's not always necessary to escalate things to that level, and certainly that's not their primary mission. So they are not specifically training for those types of rescue missions, whereas we are. What that would look like if the volunteers didn't exist, I mean, you'd certainly have a lot more fatalities and poor outcomes for people in a lot of these places. Response times would probably be much longer if you're not having the most localized resources responding. You can imagine that things would be a lot worse. There'd be a lot poorer outcomes in a lot of these scenarios, is what I would envision. But it's tough to speculate. I'm just grateful that there's enough people out there that are willing to kind of put the time in, get trained, and execute on this. And I appreciated Nicole's words, but truly, I just felt like I'm my piece in all of this, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? The people flying the helicopter have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of flight time. All the training that we put in, all the teammates that you didn't see that were out there. It's easy to see me with my name on my helmet, but all the people behind me that allowed me to get to be in that position are equally, if not even more important. And all I can do is try to be the best representative and execute my skills in the best way possible in the field. And I think that there's a lot of people that are just like that throughout all of search and rescue. And it truly is a team effort. Some days you're lucky enough to be the tip of the spear, they like to say, but we all take our turns pulling weight and helping everybody achieve the mission, which is what really matters in the end.
Yeah. I know John was over there doing all of this fancy rigging. I never even met him until about a year ago. I mean, there's so many aspects of this that I wasn't aware of until I really started kind of, working with Snohomish County with this film and learning more about it. And it's so eye-opening to see how many things you're missing that you wish you could have said thank you for in life in general.
You've done great with that here. Yeah. Yeah, you're covering that waterfront very nicely here. So well done. Yeah, from the perspective of the folks on the ground, we had not just one, very significantly injured patient, but we also had the rest of the group that we had to get out. And of course, we can imagine that they've had a very difficult day themselves. They're not going to be on their best mental game as they go through what's the remainder of a technical canyon, that sort of thing. Now, of course, it's getting dark, all the things that are stacked against them. And so, we ended up with a, multi-hours long extraction exercise to get them safely to something like a trail, and then up to the real trail, and then out, and then back to pavement and all that stuff. And unfortunately, all through that time, we did not know, nobody knew whether Nicole had even survived. All we'd heard over the radio was that she'd arrived with vital signs at the emergency department. And that's, arriving at the emergency department with vital signs isn't really a euphemism for full success for transporting a critical patient to that medical care. And so, all through that long evening and night as we got everybody out, nobody knew what that outcome was. So that was just part of the tangle.
It was so cool.
Difficult on the group as well as the rescuers. So,
oh yeah,
go ahead.
It's really awesome for me to hear later on that there was a search and rescue member assigned to each one of my friends as they walked out so that they could help them process and just have that one-on-one person to kind of just let it out to, and it's those kind of like details of the story that humanize this so well. And I think it makes it such a fascinating story that, we're not just going out there and getting people out of a canyon. We're going to connect with them, and we see them as another human being standing in front of me that's suffering, and I'm going to do whatever I can to try to relieve some of that. And it's a brave thing to stand with someone who is struggling that much and to just be that person, to be the sounding board. So the fact that that's part of your system and that you guys were cognizant enough to think of that, for me as a nurse, is really an impactful part of what you do. I know it helped them tremendously to be able to have a person to talk to as soon as they got off of that rope and were walking to safety.
Yeah, that worked out very well, and particularly when everything that we were doing that the rest of that night, had this dark cloud of the unknown outcome as you were getting into the Harborview Emergency Department. But we still have to do the pieces to get people out of harm's way, everybody, rescuers and the whole canyon group and everybody out. And it took a while, but we got that done, despite the fact that I think it was a difficult evening for everyone because we knew that the injuries were serious and didn't know what that was gonna lead to.
Mm-hmm. And then once they all got to the parking lot, the first phone call I got from one of my friends was, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in the emergency room. I'm going to go to surgery." She's like, "You won't believe it. There was a food truck in the parking lot, a volunteer that pulls up with hot coffee and stuff for us." And we just we're about to cry. We're so supported and so happy that we're safe and we're out of the canyon, but then to bring hot coffee and just the little details of this is just over the top cool. I just think this organization is if you're going to support something, I mean, like this is a top-notch kind of gig we have going on here.
Rescuees and rescuers alike all love the food truck. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how nice it is to come out of the field.
Everyone loves the food truck and the food truck crew.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Best position ever. It's like being a florist, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
always happy to see you.
And that's a great opportunity for people to volunteer in a way that folks don't even think about. Completely non-technical. You don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be a backcountry enthusiast even. But someone who's willing to and do that job and set out that food and have praise heaped upon you, which they do all the time. It's a good gig.
Yeah, that's another
great.
cool thing about search and rescue, I think, is that there's something for everybody. Like there's so many different teams. You've got equestrian teams and dog teams, and you've got like, I don't know, all drone operators, and like, I mean, there's just so many facets to this thing. And if you don't like have the skills to be out doing those kind of things, I can tell you one thing they really need is some marketing expertise. If anybody has any marketing background, it'd be great. If you want to spend your time helping these search and rescue guys, tell everybody how cool they are, because there's a lot of people that know how to rescue, but not a lot of people that specialize in marketing and that kind of thing for these people.
Yeah, that's
That
kind of
is
something
absolutely true.
That's what we've learned with this process of creating the film. And so I want to go into next steps about what our intentions are with the film and how to support search and rescue, because we've got 9 minutes left. So even though we didn't get into Nicole's experience on the ledge for 4 hours and the actual rescue mission, which is so cool, so we'll just have to save that for the film when you have a chance to watch that when it's released this summer. But so, yeah, I mean, our goal has always been, like we said at the beginning, to raise funds and awareness for search and rescue. And so we thought we would, package up the film, get some social media assets, things like that, and then hand it off to all of these search and rescue chapters around the country. And so we've been meeting with groups all over, and we're learning that not all, but many don't really want that, or at least they don't really have anything to do with that, because their expertise lies in rescuing, not necessarily putting on large-scale fundraising events. That's a ton of work, and their time is better put to use saving lives. And so we're looking for volunteers, for sponsors, for hosts to help us get this film out into the world. Right now, we're brainstorming a potential nationwide live event that would happen next year for National Search and Rescue Awareness Week, where people would have the opportunity to watch the film and support their local search and rescue chapter. And also we'll be having a lot of in-person events all around where those local search and rescue chapters will hopefully be there to chat with you all and hear about how you can volunteer and what sort of opportunities there are. So, I mean, Chris and John, like, can you, how would a successful event benefit your organization? Like, can you talk about kind of your need for fundraising?
I think there's always a need for funds. I mean, funds will constantly be put to use for gear, for trainings, to be able to help support volunteers that want to travel to national conferences where they share best practices. I mean, it's just like any other organization, except it's not a commercial enterprise. We rely on outside funds to be able to support it. But when you're striving for excellence, you're constantly trying to figure out what is the best way that we can execute rescues. So learning from other people, being able to bring experts in to teach classes, equipment, just volunteer support. I think you can think about this in terms of a business. When you're trying to promote employee retention, you want to reward good volunteers and keep people enthusiastic, and you can do that through providing them with a nice Gore-Tex jacket or something. I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. But all of that costs money, and any way that we can bring in funds to help support those volunteers, to make them feel valued, to feel part of an organization, and to be top-notch professionals by giving them access to continuing education and best practices, it all really, really helps. I mean, those are just kind of the things that come top of mind to me.
Chris described that very well, of course. Essentially, our two critical assets are the donations, the monetary resources that we get from support within the community and outside as well. And the second one is the time and energy of our people. And so, if folks are able to contribute any of those, then it's going to end up, benefiting our mission. And there's opportunity to do that throughout the areas where people live. That it's not uncommon at all to have these sorts of organizations in your area. It's not just around the Seattle area. It's not unique at all in that regard. And donated funds and member time and energy are always going to be the big elements of getting that job done.
And I think coupled with that, we always think about, I mean, John and my instincts, I think, are always to think about like the technical aspects of things and technical rescues in alpine environments and helicopters and swift water and that sort of thing. But another really important element of search and rescue is just community outreach and education, trying to engage with the public and educate them on how to recreate responsibly in the mountains, in remote environments, how to keep themselves out of danger as much as possible. And how to, if they do find themselves in a situation, how they can help us, knowing where they are, simple things, telling somebody where they went. All of these things can help promote better outcomes, avoiding accidents and promoting better outcomes. And so volunteering your time to even help with community outreach, you don't have to be a super skilled rock climber, rigger, helicopter person in order to be able to do those things. And again, other roles that you may not even be aware of, like John had mentioned with the food truck. I mean, who would have thought that, slinging burritos at 3 a.m. could be this game changing role that you can provide. It's huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge. So there's all sorts of different ways to be involved. And I would just encourage anybody out there, we're all better when everybody contributes something to the community. So if this is something that might speak to you, I highly encourage you to either give your time or treasure to help support search and rescue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really easy to lose track of all of the good things that are happening in the world with what you hear in the news and just the way that life has been lately. And this is a really easy way to have a constant remander that there's still good people out there doing good things and humanity will win. I think my interaction of just being able to be fortunate enough to be around these volunteers on a regular basis has inspired my life in ways that will forever change me. And I want to share that with you all because I think we could all use a happy spot in our life, and this one works great. I'm just saying.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope that this inspired you, and we are going to be potentially continuing more of these live discussions. We're busy working on the film. We're busy with distribution, but if you found this inspiring and entertaining, please let us know. And we have more topics that we'd like to explore, like Nicole's perspective as a nurse being the patient, also going into the mindfulness side of things and recovery. Anything else, Nicole, that I'm missing? Any other topics?
Oh, we have a whole hours and hours and hours of unused interview footage. So many topics that we wanted to include in the film, but you've got to make it a little bit more concise than 5 hours. So, So we have so many things that we could talk with you about. My journey with yoga and how that helped inform how I dealt with the situation, my recovery, the ups and downs, the human experience of going through challenge and coming out the other side of it. Just how I'm not even the same person I am today as I was the day before the accident. I mean, these kind of things, they change you at your core, and it's fascinating to see what happens on the other side of a major life event. I think we'll all have one or two in our life. We'll all lose someone we love, or, have unfortunate situation in our life that we deal with. And it's nice to hear about how someone else walked through it. And hopefully that can give you some tips on things you might be able to try on in your own personal journey.
Absolutely. So if you were inspired by this and you feel like donating towards the film, we are so grateful for that. Otherwise, we hope you just learned and can apply some of these themes to your own life, or just now you know about search and rescue and how incredible they are. So we will be hopefully continuing these live discussion series as we gear up to launch the film this fall. Follow our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we also have a newsletter, which you can sign up for on our website, which is www.wheretheropeends.com.
Yes.
So thank you so much. And
yeah, thanks everybody for coming. And thank you so much, John and Chris, for joining us today.
Thanks for
always great to
us.
see you guys.
Thanks. Bye.